support the strike. It's a race to the bottom, and we need to stop punching down.
Right. Do you not think the members should have a vote on it?
I think we should have a vote on our next Prime Minister.
Okay. Can you answer my question? Well, you will in 2 years' time, 2 and a bit years' time.
Well, let's have one now. I run my own business.
Right, sir.
I'm self-employed, and I've got boys that work for me, and they are self-employed because I'm a subcontractor. And
what line are you in, sir?
I've got a light transport business.
Right.
And we have to pay our boys. They sort out their own tax and insurance because there's not enough money in it as a subcontractor.
Right.
And it's the same everywhere. People have got no disposable income.
Right.
This is why the economy is in such a state. People haven't got any money to spend. They go into food banks.
But if you were to take the points made by the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, in an article today, he makes the point that during the pandemic, £160,000 was paid for every person's job on the road by taxpayers. So every household in the country, whether you use trains or not, £600. And by the way, he's not saying we shouldn't have done it. Keeping the rail system going cost 16 billion quid.
Nick, what is he saying then? If we shouldn't have done it, what is he saying? We needed to keep the railway running. It's important infrastructure. What is his point?
But surely as someone who's self-employed, there were many people who sadly the furlough system was not able to assist. As I meant,
I didn't get a penny. I didn't get a penny, but I have not got a problem with people striking for better pay and conditions.
But I ask you again, lastly, I have to move on.
But
hold on. You really think £1,000 a week or more is not a decent wage currently? Really?
I think you need a reality check. Anyone who lives in London, you need to be on £1,000 a week to have any standard of living.
Okay.
The problem we've got in this country, and it's not just wages, is there's no social infrastructure. So where you could manage on a salary of £500 or £600 10 years ago, you can't now.
Okay. I'm Simon, I'd love to stick with you, but I must go because we've been referencing Grant Shapps, and in fact we can turn to him now. Simon, thank you very much for your input. Let's go to Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. I've just mentioned an article. In fact, I don't know whether you were listening, Secretary said, I've actually mentioned the figures that you put at the top of your piece. What is the conclusion of what you've written today? What should rail workers and the unions take from that? Good morning to you.
Morning. Look, I think passengers know when they're being taken for a ride, and
Literally.
Unfortunately, not enough, because the railways are striking. And I was having a look back. This year alone, the unions have lodged 60 disputes. In the 3 years I've been Transport Secretary, 160 disputes. There's not been a single day where there hasn't either been strike action or the threat of strike action outstanding in the 3 years since I've been Transport Secretary. Something is wrong with the way we're running our railways. And what we've got are forever strikes and mandates which never run out, which means that there's a constant threat of industrial action, which means that actually already pretty well paid rail staff, the median salary, the average is 44 grand. We've got the train drivers on strike this coming weekend. Their average is nearly £60,000. The government's got to make a choice about whether we pay our nurses more. By the way, their medium is 31,000, care workers or others. And we're not saying that railway workers can't have a strike. We're just saying in return, we need to modernise the working practices, which come from the dark ages. Many of them haven't been updated for years. And we're saying that's got to be done at the same time. That's where we're up to on this, and I'm afraid it's a battle that we must this time win. We can't allow these union dinosaurs to keep holding us back.
I was speaking with Mr. Lynch about 10 minutes ago, Mick Lynch about 10 minutes ago, and obviously he pointed to the salaries that are enjoyed by some of the managers, the bonuses that are taken, and the money reaped by shareholders. I won't go through all the figures, you'll have heard them before. How do you respond, Mr. Shapps?
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think those salaries have been too high in the past. The current CEO, although the salary is still very high, saw a reduction, I think I'm right in saying, of 28% because we've been pushing down on these salaries. I've made sure that overall management salaries have come down, I think, by about 10% since I've been Transport Secretary. I agree, no one should be earning excessively, but the idea that we should continue to work on the 1950s and 60s sort of terms, for example, not being able to staff the weekend railway on many lines without the goodwill and volunteering of staff. If there's a football game, say there was a big football match on Saturday night.
Well, there could be a big one on Sunday afternoon, by the way, Secretary of State. There's a big one at Wembley, potentially.
Exactly, yeah. What happens is that when there is one on a Saturday, on a Sunday, you end up not being able to run services on some of our lines. And that can't be right in a modern railway. We've got to actually be able to plan to run the railway every day in the contract. I don't mean people have to work 7 days a week. In fact, many railway workers get to work, train drivers, for example, get to work a 4-day week. Very nice. All I want to see is an efficient railway where people can get on with the job. And as I said before, passengers not being taken for a ride.
Lastly, on this aspect, Mr. Shapps, in the view of Mick Lynch, who is obviously a fairly influential trade union leader, Tories are holding the workers to ransom. It's virtually warfare. Quotes, it's time for workers across the economy, whether you're a member of a union or not, to take a stand before it's too late. Mr. Shapps.
I think he lets the cat out of the bag right there, doesn't he? But for him, as he said before, he's nostalgic for the power of the trade union barons from the 1970s. That's what this is all about. It's not about trying to sort out our railways, pay a decent salary, which, as I say, I mean, I think 44k medium salary, nearly 60k for a train driver. This is not badly paid profession at all. I want it to be good. I want it to be a well-paid profession. In return for modernising our railways, where, for example, maintenance workers at Network Rail should be able to walk from Euston to King's Cross, a 5-minute walk, and do the maintenance. But Mick Lynch says they're in different regions and therefore can't. Your listeners are not fools. They can judge this, and they know we're dealing with union dinosaurs who want to run forever strikes. We're saying enough is enough. We need to modernise our railways.
It's interesting because, to remind my listeners, you are one of the prominent supporters of Rishi Sunak, but the other challenger, Liz Truss, has spelt out some of her ideas, legislating for minimum service levels on infrastructure such as the railways, raising the minimum threshold of support from 40 to 50%, doubling the notice period, stopping workers receiving tax-free payments. So that's what we hear from Ms Truss. Rishi Sunak, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure unions can't dictate how people go about their daily life. Has he actually got more bullet points, or is that just an overall theme?
I was going to say, actually, the ideas that Liz Truss has put forward are actually from my paper. And today in a Telegraph article, I outline more of them. There are 16 different things that should happen in total. This is the policy area that I've been working on. They're my ideas, and I've no doubt that either of the leadership candidates would want to take these forward. It's time to stop these forever strikes. It's time to stop these endless mandates. And it cannot be
so
right.
So Mr Sunak is equally tough, because it's very much portrayed as Liz Truss. In some papers today, Liz Truss is being portrayed as talking tough to the unions. I just want to let's not use that language, but Rishi Sunak is ready to take a robust approach to this issue as well.
That's absolutely right. And not only must we not sort of give in on the strike, we actually need to start to impose these changes, which we can do because passengers, who are the people who are losing out here, are not seeing a modernised railway. I mean, to give you an example, we still have the same number of booking offices, ticket offices, as we did when everyone bought their tickets online. At a ticket office.
Yeah,
now only 1 in 8 buy them at a ticket office because so many people buy them online, or contactless payment as you walk through. We've got to get those people from outside, from behind those glass and perspex screens, and helping people on the platforms. So Rishi would certainly wish to do all of those things as well. And then say, I've got a list of 16 different policies that I've been working on, some of which Liz outlined because I've been working on them across government.
Okay. Finally, on the transport brief, I was speaking yesterday with John Holland-Kaye, just to remind my listeners, he's the Chief Executive Officer at Heathrow Airport, and you might have seen the story in the papers. He told me of this rather gruesome practice of people who are perfectly well managing to avail themselves of wheelchairs at airports, which gets them obviously onto the plane and indeed off the plane. They don't have to do any of that, and it's apparently a sort of TikTok meme or TikTok theme. Some action needs to be taken because in some instances people are having to hobble on and off aircraft because these vile lowlives are, I'm going to use the word nicking, I know they don't steal, nicking the wheelchairs. Secretary of State.
It's completely wrong, and I was concerned. I did see John Holland-Kaye's comments on that from Heathrow. It's completely wrong if that's happening, and of course, I'd impress on the authorities to take action and for reasonable checks to be carried out. Of course, the underlying problem was we did see this huge difficulty recovering from the stop-start issues surrounding coronavirus. Coronavirus ended. We managed to exit all of the lockdowns because people wanted to travel again. The good news is it hasn't been much covered, But whereas a few weeks ago, Easter and Whitsun, we were seeing 5 or 6% cancellations. This weekend, that had dropped to less than 1%, which is the industry average. There are always some technical problems or problems with air traffic control elsewhere and that sort of thing. So we haven't seen the predicted chaos so far this summer at the airports. And that means I hope that people, even if they were tempted, do not continue to do something which is really quite disgraceful.
Grateful for your time. Thank you. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps appearing here on LBC Weather Time. 1 minute after 9. News next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.